Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we're here to talk about all the things going on in the Big Ten. We have a I can't even describe how huge of an upset that we had with Nebraska taking down Purdue. I know my man Burke here loved to see
Yay.
it. He was having a good time. Every time Burke comes on, he has to come on and say some nice things
Hey,
about
man,
Purdue.
as down bad as I was after that Rutgers game, like I needed something.
It
And
was a nice little
shout out
refresher,
to the
huh?
Huskers. Thanks for delivering.
Rank Mask and Tamanaga, man, they saved you from a
Oh
bad
yeah.
night. So we're gonna talk about it, and honestly, Purdue fans, just just accept it. Okay, listen, I have given your team praise all year long, and they've deserved it, and they still are a top
I've come on
championship
here
team.
giving them nothing but praise. They're a great
Exactly.
squad.
And there's still praise to be given after this game, so there will be praise given
Yeah.
as well because Nebraska is just a good basketball team that made things happen. But we'll get into it more. I'm just telling you, don't come in here and say, "Oh, these guys are haters" or anything like that. We have the receipts. We've been nice. I don't know about Alec because Alec hasn't talked about him yet, but we'll see. We'll gauge him a little bit before we get going. But before we do that, go ahead and introduce yourself, guys, and tell people about your podcast. Burke, why don't you start us off?
All right. I'm Burke White. I'm the host of the Often Daunted Podcast. It's a one-man operation. You're looking at it. And yeah, usually it's just a fun recap, hopefully recapping a Hoosier victory. But unfortunately, this Rutgers game, man, it was a miserable watch. It was a miserable episode to record. And yeah, we are bearing it. We're moving on. But we're gonna bring it up here in a bit. So
Plenty of thoughts, I'm sure.
yeah.
So, Alec, tell the people about you, where they can find you at.
Yeah, I'm Alec. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Pike's Place podcast, along with my good buddy Mike, of course. You might recognize me from football season, also host of the What's Choppin' podcast. But now I'm here to talk basketball too. Football will still be around, of course, because that never ends. Football never ends. But basketball, predominant sport here. Feeling really good about the win. You can find me at AlexCR12. It's my Twitter. That's right under my name. And then at Pike's Place Pod on social media too. That's where you can find us, and Pike's Place Podcast on all your podcasting platforms. We'll be sure to have an episode up soon about this win because it's a big one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, first conference win of the season. It's a great time for you to make your debut on the basketball episodes for the Big Ten Huddle, and we appreciate you being here. All three of our podcasts are brought to you by Big Banter Sports, BigBanterSports.com. Alec is with the What's Choppin', like you said, and also his basketball with the Pike's Place, and Burke over there at Often Daunted doing great work for the Big Banter Sports Network. Go check us out over there. We appreciate that. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. It helps us out. The basketball episodes have been doing fantastic. So if you're watching, you're liking, and comment your thoughts as well. If there's something that we say that you're like, hey, I think that was right, or if you're a typical internet person and you just want to go off and say we said something wrong, that's fine too. I don't care. Whatever you want to comment, tell us we're wrong, tell us we're right. It's all good to me. And if you're listening on podcast, please do subscribe and give us a rating over there as well. All right, guys, let's get into it. Our very first game we have to talk about. Nebraska takes down Purdue. Kasai Tamanaga scores 19 points. Rank Mass also a wonderful defensive performance against Zach Edey. And I think that was kind of the story of the game. Fred Hoiberg schemed up things really well with the Nebraska defense, and Matt Painter just never really had an answer for it. Zach Edey never really had an answer for it. As great as this team is, they are going to run into some things every now and then where the team just is not going to be able to overcome what was going on. Now they did at times. There was kind of some comebacks here, comes back there, but every single time Purdue came back, it felt like Nebraska just kind of got hot, went off, and even though it was a 16-point win, a 16-point win. It was closer than that throughout the game. Nebraska, like I said, just kind of pulled away there at the end. Burke, I'm going to give you the floor first to talk about the Boilermakers and the Huskers. What were your thoughts?
Hey, my thoughts to all those Boilermaker fans out there. Guess what? It's okay to lose at Nebraska. Okay? You can trust me. It's okay to lose at Nebraska. This is a solid Nebraska team. That is an awesome environment they've got going in Lincoln. That being said, there is no pain like losing when you're the top ranked team. That pain is it's the absolute worst. And just ultimately after the Rutgers game, like I said, I mean, I just followed that down Rutgers game into this slight uplift that was seeing Purdue get upset. But in that game, man, Nebraska's ability to shoot the ball, just spread the floor, rink masked, just having to have Edey guard him, that spreads the floor in itself. Opened up the lanes for all these guards just to have a day on the inside. Um, and yeah, it was a nice palate cleanser for me to get to see that. But again, I do feel for the Purdue fans. I have a brother who's currently a senior at Purdue, and I root for them to have success. But losing when you are the top dog, there is no pain like it.
There's a certain team that I wished would have lost when they were the top dog in football a couple days ago, but we won't get into that, right? We won't go there. I will say that this is just kind of the time of year where top ranked teams fall, right? I mean, Houston fell yesterday as well. Tennessee fell today to Mississippi State, a not very good Mississippi State team. They fell to them, so it's not like this is the only Purdue's the only team this is happening to.
Oh yeah, so hey, on that note, props to
Yeah.
the 76 Hoosiers. They get a pop champagne again right now.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like it was just it was one of those games where Nebraska came out, they were hot, they had a good game plan, and quite frankly, Fred Hoiberg, he was just the better coach in the game. I felt like he made the better decisions, he rocked with his guys, he trusted his players, and it really showed. Alec, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give a big shout out to the fellow unranked Purdue Reapers that wear red jerseys. Of course, feels like it's a whole thing now. Northwestern wears purple. That's a shade of red. It counts. But yeah, I agree with everything that you guys have been saying. I mean, Tominaga is just a star at this point. I mean, yeah, ranked Moss looked great, especially on defense against Zach Edey, which is not easy to do. I know Rutgers makes it look easy sometimes, but it's not easy to guard him. I will say. I feel like I watched this game last year when Nebraska came to Jersey Mike's Arena, where it was just nothing could go right for Rutgers. Even whenever they would get back in the game, Nebraska would hit a couple shots, they just kind of pull away a little bit more. It's just one of those games where it's like no matter what you do, just can't get things to go your way. And it's not like they played a terrible game. I thought Purdue played a pretty good game, but Nebraska just played a better game. And Nebraska's coming to Rutgers next week, so that'll be an interesting test to see how they play. But I'm very impressed by Nebraska. The Cornhuskers look really good right now. They're really firing on all cylinders, even when maybe some things don't go right here and there. I'm really impressed with them so far. And yeah, like Burke said, it's okay to lose. It's okay to take a loss here and there. The Big Ten is a great conference, not as good as it was in the past, but it's one of the most physical out there. They're gonna play some good basketball and. I mean, yeah, I'm looking at the live chat right now. I know Frank just said, 60% from three. And that's what I found really funny. When Purdue posted the final score on their Twitter, they, of course, included the little note that said, Nebraska shoots 14 for 22 from three as they defeat us. And I mean, you just got to tip your hat to, it's just insane. You got to tip your hat to an absurd 3-point shooting night.
Well, and also, too, you have to look at the three-pointing. Obviously, three-pointing, that's a great basketball term there. The three-point shooting. Mason Gillis obviously did his part, right? 5 for 10 from three. Like, he came in and he was hot. But Fletcher Lawyer, only 21 minutes in this game. Matt Painter kind of pulled him early, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking too much about it, but Matt Painter said something at the Big Ten tournament last year where he said something about how Fletcher Lawyer's confidence maybe wasn't there completely. Now, I'm not trying to say that Fletcher Lawyer is not a confident kid or anything like that, but there was just a small comment about that made. And I'm thinking to myself, like, do you really want to pull him in a game like this if he is a kid who struggles with confidence? Again, not saying he is, I'm just speculating here. If he is one of those kids who struggles with confidence, shoot or shoot. Do you let him get through the shooting? Do you let him, make that happen? Or did you agree with the pulling of Fletcher Lawyer? Burke, I'm going to go to you on this one. Did you agree with the pulling of Fletcher Lawyer, or did you think maybe Painter should have left him in there, seeing how good, like Frank said here, most were contested, wasn't even mad. Tominaga was going absolutely crazy. Do you leave Fletcher Lawyer in that game just to try to combat a little bit of the 3-point shooting that Nebraska was shooting so well?
I mean, just in short, whenever you're down that much, you leave your shooters in any game down that much. It was a bit surprising, but hey, I mean, there's no sense in questioning Painter right now. I mean, it's not March. That's when you question Painter. Yeah, Tominaga went nuts. It was a great night of shooting for the Nebraska team as a whole. 14 of 20, just an outstanding night. So, I mean, those are going to happen, and there are some nights where there's nothing you can do. As good as you bring it, if they bring that shooting, like there's just nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, and Painter put Heidi in there for Fletcher Lawyer. Heidi's shooting something like 50% this season. He's not shot the most 3-pointers just because he's not had the most playing time. But I at a certain point, you're right, Burke. When the other team is just shooting so well, sometimes it's just not your night. And I think most Purdue fans can say that just happens from now and then, which kind of leads me to the other part, and I'll bring this to you, Alec. Zach Edey struggled against an undersized, ranked Mast. I know the scheme was good, but you would still like to see Edey kind of work through those things and maybe eventually find himself a little bit more. The scoring wasn't too bad. He did get 15 points, but only 7 rebounds. That should Purdue fans be concerned about Edey getting kind of schemed up here and not being able to be himself in this game?
I would say I wouldn't be too concerned. Obviously, it's not great when your star player, National Player of the Year contender struggles and is not up to his usual self. But at the same time, while Fred Hoiberg schemed up a really good game, you got to trust Matt Painter to scheme up an alternative game plan for when teams, go to some of these. I like to bring it back to Rutgers because I feel like they've done a really good job of defending Edey and Purdue the last couple of years for those, switch heavy, double heavy, trap heavy, type of defensive looks. And I think you got to trust Painter to, keep trying to dial up some of those looks. And Edey's going to get his no matter what. So I feel like you're never going to have to worry about him being completely shut out of a game. And I think you still have to trust to go to him. He's going to have his off nights, obviously. He's a college basketball player. Nobody's ever perfect. So I think you just got to trust him and Painter to really right the ship and get back on board. And yeah, I mean, like you guys were saying, sometimes it's just not your night and the other team is just on fire. So I think you got to trust the process and, just got to keep doing what you've already been doing because it's worked really well so far. And, maybe, tweak some things here and there, obviously. There's a reason they lost this game by double digits, even if it was closer than the score indicated. But I feel like you just got to keep, trusting Painter to scheme up some better looks. He's a great offensive coach. There's no doubt about it. So we'll see what they do from here. I think you still trust Edey to really find his footing and get back into these games and being his usual dominant self. So I trust him to still look pretty good. But of course, yeah, like there's going to be teams that are going to try to stop him and have some of these game plans, but not everyone has the versatility or the guys to do it. So we'll see how it goes from here, but I think you just got to trust them.
Yeah, and I think games like this are games that Purdue needs to continue to improve, right? When you're so good throughout the entire, regular season, conference play and stuff like that, it can be hard to prepare for those tough games in the tournament where maybe, one guy like a Zach Edey's not playing up to what he normally is. And, hopefully a game like this, I think most people would agree Purdue's still the favorite, by far the favorite to win the Big Ten this season. So I don't think there's concern about that right now. But, it is kind of good to have these things happen with a struggling Edey from time to time. I have one more question because I do want to give some love to us. We've talked about him a little bit. I do want to give some love to Rank Mast because he played a phenomenal game. And I think when he kind of came into the season, he was seen maybe kind of as a little bit more of a role player, right? Transferred up from a smaller school. I think it was Bradley was the school he transferred from. So, kind of maybe seen as more of a role player. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I said, look, Tominaga is getting the love, but is Rank Mast really the star of this team? Don't get me wrong. Tominaga has the emotion and he's kind of the fan favorite and stuff, but just by like pure skill set, like, is Rank Mast more of like the star of this team that really makes them work and really makes it happen? And should he be the one that is maybe looked upon as maybe an all Big Ten type of player, first team, second team guy? Burke, what are your thoughts on Mast?
My thoughts on the whole star factor of it is you're not going to dethrone Tominaga, just like with his story. There's just no doing that. Even if you are the new Big Ten Dutch destroyer, Rink Mast, like
Dutch destroyer.
But he just came onto the scene and immediately was a centerpiece for this team. And it is truly astounding that the Nebraska Cornhuskers have assembled a squad that has now lived up into the hype, like into the new year. Like they're really figuring it out, and it is on the back. Like as much fun as it is following Tominaga and just like watching him play. The success of this team is most squarely on the back of Rink Mass.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll go to the next one. Indiana and Rutgers. Alec, I know you're excited about this one. Winners go first here, so we're going to let Alec talk about the game first. But before we do, I just want to say this was Rutgers' first conference win of the season. Cliff Amorie was dominant on the defensive end as per usual. He just made his presence known the entire game. It was obvious to every single person out there that he was not going to be denied on the defensive end. He had his 5 blocks in this game. It seems like the dude's getting 4 or more blocks every single game, and it's really, really fun to watch. Alec, what were some of your general thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it was definitely a breath of fresh air. That was a classic Steve Pike game where he's going to wear you out on the defensive end and on the boards. And I was especially surprised with the boards because Rutgers has been a straight up bad rebounding team this year. They got absolutely owned on the boards by Illinois. They got out rebounded in the other 2 Big Ten games, but against Indiana, they really stepped it up, especially against a team with a lot of length like Indiana. I mean, they got the 2 bigs in Malik Renew and Khalil Ware. That was what I was very surprised with, was how well they did in the rebounding game. And I mean, I know Cliff Amorie was dominant on defense with his 5 blocks, like you said, JR, and the Ken Pom MVP, as it says right here, Mawat Mag, he had a huge game. He's really becoming a key option on offense, which is a boon for this team because he's usually one of those guys where he's like a defensive stopper and then he's going to get his every now and then on offense, kind of like a play within the flow guy, but he's starting to hunt his own shot, get the ball in his hands, and he's making good decisions. But I want to give a huge shout out to Austin Williams in this game. Austin Williams is his second start of the season. He started to get his playing time ramped back up after having a pretty good stretch against Ohio State where he was on point on both ends of the floor. He played pretty well against Iowa as well. Both of them, they lost, but he got the start tonight and he looked really good. And he really provided a spark to this team that they hadn't seen before on offense. And that's a guy who can get the ball, command the ball, and just break his guy down and get to the rim and put up a good shot. And that's something that Rutgers hasn't had this year. So I have to give a huge shout out to him. His 7th and final year of college basketball. He's an old guy, but he really put up some good numbers tonight. He's consistent. That's what Rutgers needs right now, is a consistent performer. Another guy to look out for, Andre Hyatt. He just, every single time, it's like within the first 10 minutes of the second half, almost every game, he hits 2 big threes to either put him back into the game or extend a lead that they have. I talked to him last night after the game. He said he's just a second half guy, and that's what he takes pride in, coming out of the locker room. I really think he's fitting that role right now. Derek Simpson didn't have the best shooting night. He's still struggling from the floor, only 2 for 13. One huge 3 that put Rutgers up 3 at halftime with I think it was midway between the 3-point line and the half court line. He just banked it in somehow, but he had some huge free throws made down the stretch as well. Hyde had some big free throws. Mag had some big free throws. Pretty much Rutgers did really well from the free throw line. I was happy to see that. The defense was on point. It wasn't even just Amorie either, as everyone. They would have, when Indiana would have the 2 big lineup out, Amorie would get the guy that has the ball, and then they would kind of rotate and switch out, flash doubles at whoever the other guy is. So if Ware is backing down on the block, Amorie would be one-on-one with him. And if you had Renew on the other blocker, he's trying to cut in from the perimeter, they put 2 guys on him, and it really worked well. Indiana just felt out of sync on pretty much every end of the floor on offense and on defense. And I will say this, it was an ugly game. It was very, very ugly. Neither team shot particularly well from the floor. But I'm happy the Rutgers got the win, and it's encouraging that they can get some wins playing like this, even if it's against a team that shoots equally as bad. It was very encouraging. And my last note before I hand it off to Burke, I want to say a big goodbye and so long to Xavier Johnson. He got his Jersey Mike's Arena goodbye getting ejected in that game, and the crowd was not as big as it usually was because, for those who don't know, it was a state of emergency in New Jersey last night. There's still floods all around me as well. The crowd wasn't where it usually is, but it was still loud enough. Xavier Johnson got his one last goodbye because this is the last time these two teams play each other. And I will say, as I think I speak for all Rutgers fans, we will not miss him.
Definitely one of those players who just always around, always sticking around, and you're like, oh man, we have to face this guy again because he has some of those nights where he's just really, really good. I had to go with the Ken Palm MVPs for the thing here because even this game I was trying to look at, I was like, man, who was the MVP in this game for Rutgers? Because it was just such a balanced attack, and there was so much good defense, back and forth. And this is really the way that Rutgers likes to win. Really strong defense, get the offense going enough to score some good points, maybe not anything high-flying, but that was the big thing for them to be able to get the W in this one. Burke, what were your thoughts on this game?
My thoughts on this game, the Nebraska game, I was down bad. The Ohio State game lifted me up a bit, got a little confidence in their shooting, got a little confidence in what emotion they were bringing into the game. And then this one has entirely just deflated me, man. This was a killer of a game to watch. Xavier Johnson, our ultra mega super senior, like not a super senior because those would be like 5th year seniors. This dude is an ultra mega deluxe super senior, 6 years. And he's making some of the most boneheaded decisions you will see on the basketball court. It is offensive at times. Like when the team wants to look to a captain, and just what he's bringing to the table, it is deflating to the entire program right now. It's inexcusable. Dude, punching a dude in the dick on your drive is straight up sucker shit. That is sucker shit. And honestly, Xavier Johnson doing that, it's inexcusable. And even almost just as inexcusable were him leading the turnovers for the Hoosiers with 5 out of the Hoosiers' 18 turnovers in this game, which the Rutgers Scarlet Knights were able to turn into 18 second chance points. It's the entire team's inability to shoot free throws, 4 for 15 on the night. That's 4 for 15 on the night and allowing 19 offensive rebounds. Like, free throws and defensive rebounding, aren't those the first 2 things that any basketball player learns? Like that is a flaw on the foundational level of this team right now. You can't hit free throws? How did you get to this level of D1 basketball, Power 5 D1 basketball, and we can't hit free throws? 4 for 15. Like, you could go to a 6th grade boys CYO tournament over the holiday, and I guarantee you most teams are shooting 6 or 7 for 15. Just any team. It's like 6th grade, 7th grade boys. And it's incredible. The 3-point shots that were airballed they were works of art with how they were airballing these things. This game was incredible to watch. It's the 7 for 26 from 3 after we had just started building some confidence in what this team was bringing from the perimeter. And again, it is just a year senior. It is a 6th year senior leading this team, getting kicked out. And then it makes you just retroactively as a fan look back on everything that has happened with him. And then it's little shit. Like, I didn't want to be the old dog complaining about stuff like this, but now that he's out here punching dudes in the tallywhacker in the middle of the game, we need to there were so many times I wanted him to just put on a IU hoodie on the sideline, on the bench. And it was like a fashion show sometimes. And like, I'm not being the old crazy, complainer about Indiana basketball when I'm saying that, because like young guys coming into this program who look to spend some time here, like Ja'Kai Newton, who's been out all year, he's wearing his IU gear all the time. Man, can you tell I'm a little, bent out of order from this experience?
I'm just letting you go, Burke. It sounds
Good
like
God.
you need this more than
yeah,
other
dude.
people need
This
to hear
feels good. See you guys next week.
Yeah. I did want to ask you a question because I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm with you. When you have a 6-year senior, like, where's the leadership?
You don't. Nobody ever has.
Right.
This is supposed to be a level of experience that is unparalleled.
Right.
And it's just anything but.
So my question is, is this more on Xavier Johnson not being the leader, or is this, more on Mike Woodson, his coaching? Is he not holding these players accountable? I mean, certainly the free throws. 4 for 15? How can you be a coach and have your players go out there and go 4 for 15 on free throws? I know the players have to make it, but like, what are you doing in practice that your guys are only making 4 of 15 free throws? I don't know. Well, you didn't mention Mike Woodson at all there, Burke. So I'm curious. Do you think this is a Mike Woodson problem? Do you think this is just undisciplined players? What are your thoughts on that?
Right now, with how they're coming out at sometimes, like it's a team-wide problem, and that starts at the top. It funnels through Xavier Johnson because he is the mouthpiece of the coach. Like he is the middleman for them in a lot of ways. And it's something sour, man. And it's bleeding through the team right now. It's tough. It's tough out here. Mike Woodson, I am not in the fire Mike Woodson camp as so many Hoosiers are so quick to jump to.
Yeah, I'm not.
He has gotten us in a better position each year, and he is getting us like guys like Malik. Dude, even if on Malik alone, I want to see what Malik becomes as a Hoosier. So like if that takes keeping Mike, like I'm all for that. Just because the second you fire him, Malik is liable to go to any of the highest bidders because I'm sure he's going to be a commodity someday that everybody will be lining up for. And it's just disheartening to see just the manner in which they can come out so often, just flat and just lifeless and just directionless. And that, you know what? Yes, I'm going to say it. Yes, that starts with Mike Woodson.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not suggesting Mike Woodson should be fired. He deserves, to be commended for what Kalel Ware has been this year. He's been a very good defender, a very good defensive rebounder. I think he's probably going to be in contention for all Big Ten defensive team at the end of the year if he keeps playing the way that he is. Obviously, Cliff Maurier, has that sealed up right now if he keeps blocking 5 shots a game. But I think between him and Malik Renew, you can see that Mike Woodson can put these players together and make these things happen. Alec, one more question for you before we move on from this game. Last time we were here, we were talking about, I think it was Rutgers and Iowa, and we questioned, are Rutgers fans, where are they at right now? Are they just kind of riding this season out, seeing where it goes, because they know they have 2 really good recruits coming in next year? And just kind of questioning, what are the expectations? I'm not saying that they don't have expectations, but we're kind of trying to figure that out. What would you say is the expectations by Rutgers fans for this Rutgers team this season? It's
tough because the expectations have really been changing as the season's gone on. I don't think the expectations are too high right now. I mean, like you said, you got the star recruiting class coming in next year. A lot of people are, I don't want to say checked out, but are like kind of looking ahead, like, all right, things will get better after this year. And I mean, the tough reality is there's not much you can do to prepare or try to adequately address losing your starting backcourt in June. There's just not much you can do to address that. And I think people may have gotten a little bit too. I don't want to say they got too excited, because I can't blame people for getting excited, especially with the way Steve Pike has worked with some of these teams in the past. I think the expectations were a little bit too high for some players like a Noah Fernandes, who has unfortunately not looked as strong as he did in recent years, especially with UMass. Gavin Griffiths, unfortunately, I think it's just a confidence and a mental issue right now. He has no confidence right now to put anything up. He just needs to see a couple of shots go in, and I think things will get better for him. The problem is his defense just isn't good enough to make up for that. And if you're not playing good defense under Steve Peichel and you're not making like 5 threes a game, you're not going to play. So I think some of the pieces to this team, Derek Simpson hasn't exactly, even though he's made big shots and he's been a great free throw shooter, he hasn't exactly taken the leap that people expected him to. Cliff Morey on offense in particular has been a bit of a disappointment. He's not really a 1A on offense. He can't really carry an offense like that. He just unfortunately doesn't really have the skill set to do so, especially when he gets the balls. When he gets the ball in his hands, still a great defender, but on offense, it's just kind of has been a bit underwhelming. So I think the expectations are, I think they're tempered right now. I don't think people are expecting an NCAA tournament berth right now, but if they can get some wins in the Big Ten, you'll feel a little bit better, because, you got the great recruiting class coming in, but of course you got to fill out the rest of the roster. And a lot of those guys that are here right now will probably be back next year. Watmag will probably be the senior leader on this team. You got guys like Antoine Wolfolk, only a sophomore. Derek Simpson will probably be back. Michael Davis, didn't even talk about him before, but he's looked really good so far, especially for a freshman. That now going into the season, nobody really knew what his role was going to be. Some people were talking about maybe redshirting him. He was going to be one of those reserve guys, but he's been really good. Really good friends with Ace Bailey too, so that should be fun. But yeah, I think people are they're not really checked out, but they are excited to see what next year comes. And anything positive that happens this year is kind of like playing with house money. At least that's my kind of view on it. Obviously, people still care, and they're going to come to games, and they're going to make Jersey Mike's Arena one of the toughest places to play in the country. But it's not like it's not like this year is like ride or die, because they're still next year with the recruits that they have coming in.
Yeah, it's kind of the sense I got was, it's like everything that happens this season. Like, yes, you think about this season, but it's also like, well, what does this mean for next season, right? Not to say that anybody's given up on this season. I don't think that's accurate. But there's always that thought of like, what's coming next, because we are going to have a really good team next year, especially if we keep players around, which, is always a question, as any Rutgers fan knows, after, like you said, losing your backcourt. What was it, in June or whenever it was. So we'll see what happens there, but I like this win for Rutgers and for Rutgers to get it their way. Burke, I have in-laws who are IU fans, and they are very passionate about free throws. So I heard all about
it. We've never been more passionate about free throws.
Yeah, I heard all about it. So
it's a
wild one. But all right, well, let's get on to our next one.
Dude, it is a fundamental factor of basketball. How can you not hit free throws?
I agree. Ohio State just missed a whole lot of free throws, but we'll talk about that game after this one. So,
yeah, sorry. Continue. Next game.
I'm right there with you. I'm like seething while watching this Ohio State game. I'm like, make your free throws, darn it. But yeah. Northwestern conquers Penn State, and they get a win on the road, which, is really, really hard to do in the Big Ten, but they were able to make it happen. They were down quite a bit in this game, but obviously they came storming back. They were able to make the plays that needed to be made, so that way they could come back and win this one. They were down by 8 points at the half, and then in the second half, they had, I think, a 15-0 run that really gave them the lead, and they never really relented from there. Boo Buie had a good game, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, just filling up the box score there, as you do expect for Boo Buie to do. But all in all, this was just a resilient Northwestern team who was able to come back on this Penn State team. Kanye Clary is obviously a wonderful player. Ace Baldwin struggled a bit in this one from time to time. I wouldn't say he was bad, but 6, 3, and 5, not what you want from Ace Baldwin in order to get a win here. Burke, what were your thoughts on the Northwestern win over Penn State?
Oh, my thoughts were the refs, man. The refs. That freaking free throw.
Yep.
That he missed it. He missed it the best possible way you can miss it. That wasn't a lane violation.
No,
he timed his race to the rim perfectly too.
Yeah. And did you hear they said he stepped in the paint before it hit the rim?
Yeah. No,
his foot
and then
was across
and
the
it wasn't
free
even
throw line.
close.
Yeah,
I think it was across the free throw line, but man, he timed it so well that he was in stride heading towards the basket. But even better, the ball, the way it bounced out right to the open shooter. They were ready to go for the three that they were looking for.
Yeah.
And that just sucks that they didn't get the opportunity to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it was at the hands of Northwestern. Like that happens. I mean, yeah, the just end game shenanigans, man. I still take it personally, that push off Boo Buie had on Trey Galloway to seal that win in Assembly Hall. Like, man, that stuff sticks with a guy. And hey, credit to the Northwestern team. They are playing great. Like Boo Buie, he's incredible. He truly is. And while they do have role players for sure compared to Chase Aldige, but yeah, they're putting it together. You said they had that stride where they had like 13 points or so.
I think it was a 15-0 run they had in the second half.
Yeah. The way that kicked off, man. The what kicked the brakes on the whole situation, that technical to Mike Rhodes. Yeah. That was gutting as well. Like, he threw a baby fit on the side, but that's what coaches do in college basketball.
I didn't think it
was they pout, they whine, they fit. No, unless you're touching somebody. Yeah. I mean, that just hit the skids on everything. Northwestern comes back, and of course, just Penn State was lost until Kanye Clary was able to finally get the lid back off the bucket. And
he's pretty good at that.
Yeah, he is a nice piece they've got there. And then just sorry for Penn State and the way that ended for you.
Yeah, well, I think Boo Buie is another one of those players like Alec was talking about that you're going to be glad when he plays his last game in your arena because he's been very good, and I'm not even as high on as some other people are. I think he's a very good player, but he's definitely one that's been around for a long time and done some nasty work to a few teams, and it's like, okay, we're going to be glad when you're out of here. Alec, what were your thoughts on the Northwestern win over Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, I just hate, I guess as a blanket statement, I hate when players make some really savvy and great plays and the officials just kind of like look past it and don't see it. It always sucks to see, and unfortunate that it happened to Penn State. But yeah, Kanye Clary has been extremely impressive. I wasn't expecting this from him, but he's been really good so far. And yeah, in my opinion, Boo Buie is kind of like Trae Young, where he's like really good at just getting a little bit of a move to like, he'll lean into the defender a little bit, and then I'll be like, oh no, I drew a foul, and then they'll give him a whistle. I feel like I see this at least twice a game where he he's such a great guy in the paint, especially when he gets his floater. But the way he gets it is, he'll drive in and then stop, give you a little bit of a forearm, and then he'll just put up an uncontested floater. But yeah, I mean, what a win for Northwestern. I think they really have some nice guys. Ty Berry, if he can keep hitting threes like this, I think this team has a really good second guy. Langborg didn't have the best game, but he's shown that he can stripe it too from the outside. And Brooks Barnheiser is just a go-to guy. Another guy, like you mentioned, these role players that can really play well. And I mean, Northwestern, I think I'm not terribly high on them so far. I don't know if they're one of those top 5 teams in the conference, but I mean, if they can put together some really good shooting performances, they got a shot.
Well, and one of the most interesting things about Northwestern is, they start those 4 guards, Barnheiser, Langborg, Buie, and Berry. And really the guys they bring off the bench are forwards and Nicholson, the center. So it's really, really interesting when you get into the rotation stuff and how this team attacks you. And when you start off the game that way and then they start subbing, and it really is just a difficult team once they get to sub in and once they start to do their thing to try and defend. I mean, their guards, Barnheiser played 36 minutes, Barry played 35, Bowie played 36, and then Langborg played 30. So they're in there a lot, but they do switch in and out, and it's interesting to see how those things happen. I think at the end of the day, Penn State, I think Mike Rhodes has a really good future with these guys. Wahab, got some more rebounds in this one, had a double-double, 13 points, 10 rebounds as well. So I think Mike Rhodes has a good team here. I just think, especially in the Big Ten, bringing in as many transfers as he did and kind of resetting your team. I'm not trying to say that the Big Ten is the toughest conference. I do think it's probably one of the top three. Personally, I would put it second. But at the end of the day, like the physicality and the playing at the very tough arenas that it is. Guys tend to need a season to kind of get used to it before they can get to it. And I think we're going to see that with Penn State. I think this Penn State team is going to come back next year. And kind of like we were talking about with Rutgers, Alex, is they're kind of building off this year for next year. And it's kind of looking forward to that a little bit and saying, let's build off what we see that was good here, moving on from there. Burke, do you have any thoughts about Mike Rhodes and just what he's doing with this Penn State team? Are you high on him? Are you kind of low on him? What are your thoughts?
I don't know, because this Penn State team seems so like two different squads at some times. I think he'll figure it out. I just want Penn State to have a coach they can keep. Like it just seems like they just are either terrible enough they get fired or good enough they move on immediately. And here's hoping that they found a good one with him.
I hope they do too, because Penn State basketball, I think the fans are good over there, and I think they are hungry for something like that. So, all right, let's move on to Wisconsin. Takes down Ohio State at Ohio State. Like I said, the free throws were not the best thing ever. As we mentioned it a little bit earlier, the Ohio State Hoops Insider, Wolf, yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well about this one. Listen, I'm kind of worried. I've been talking all year about, like, it's good to see Ohio State doing well, but if we get into the middle of January, we're going to start struggling a little bit, then I'm going to be worried about, a bad run. And this was about the time last year when Ohio State's bad run started and they lost, double-digit games and only had one win or something like that there. And, Ohio State needs to correct this. Now, Wisconsin's a really hard team to correct things on, but you can't be dropping games to Penn State early on like they did, and you can't have the shooting performance that you had against IU earlier this year, or last game, actually. Bruce Thornton was better. I felt like Roddy Gale was better, but at the end of the day, they just couldn't close out the game. They were neck and neck all the way through, and then once it got to a few minutes left, Wisconsin started to pull ahead. They had a 6-point lead, and they got 5 more points after that to put it up by 11 points. It shows that Ohio State is still not fixing the things that they need to fix in order to ascend themselves into that top 5 or 4 spot in the conference. They still are probably a top half of the team in the conference, but it will remain to be seen because they need to make these things happen. Alec, what were your thoughts on the Ohio State loss to Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, they look a lot better this year. I think they've just connected so much better, but Wisconsin, they've come out of nowhere. I thought they would be a fine team, one of those like 7-8 range guy like type of teams. But if we talked about Purdue earlier, if Purdue kind of loses a couple games here and there, Wisconsin could sneak up on them. But yeah, this Wisconsin team looks really impressive. AJ Storr has been so much better than I could have thought coming in from St. John's. He had a great game, 17 points. Max Klesmit looked really good too, 18 points, really efficient shooting the ball as well. They just got some really good guards. Chucky Hepburn hasn't looked the best, but yeah, they just got a bunch of guards that can really play, and they got experienced guys too, especially after a young team like last year's. Even Wall and Crowell down low are really experienced, and that's what wins in college basketball, especially in these past couple of years with all these guys staying for extra years, 5th, 6th, even 7th year guys. It's the experienced guards. That's what wins in March. So this could be a sneaky good team come March, as long as they keep it together and keep looking and shooting like the way that they are right now. And Ohio State, it's definitely a bit worrying that some of these problems are still arising. Not the best shooting night, like you mentioned. The free throws, 4 of 10, not great. But I will say Jamison Battle looked really good again. I was at the Ohio State Rutgers game. He absolutely crushed us again. He has a vendetta for Rutgers, I feel like, because he did it against Minnesota last year and the year before that. Now he's doing it for Ohio State. But yeah, Thornton and Gale definitely have clicked a little bit better. I was surprised to see Zed Key coming off the bench, but now you got, Battle and Akpara down low. It feels like that's working a little bit better, especially in the rebounding game as well. I still have a personal vendetta against Zed Key for multiple reasons, but that's a story for another time.
Right.
But yeah, I think Ohio State, I feel like, they're down to 2 or 3 in the conference by now. I don't know if I'd be worried, but there's definitely some things to turn around. But they've shown that they can really play with some of the best in the conference. I wouldn't be too worried. Wisconsin just looks like one of those teams that they're going to be really good pretty much no matter what. And I don't know if they'll beat Purdue in the Big Ten standings, but they have a shot at it for sure.
Yeah, no, I think I'm really high on this Wisconsin team, especially after tonight seeing them, go into the Schott Steam Center in Columbus and get that win. Now, Ohio State doesn't have the best home arena. I would say it's probably one of the 3 worst in the Big Ten, just because the way they built that thing and the students and the people around Columbus are not the most energetic there ever is. So it's not the best arena there is, but it's still, I mean, it's your home arena and you have to protect it. And they didn't do that tonight. So, Burke, are you kind of with Alec here where it's like, don't be concerned, Ohio State's going to right this ship? Or are you kind of like me where it's like, hey, we've seen this before and we could easily see things go downhill again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit of both. Because I feel like there is reason to feel a little bit of both. As far as this being the same thing we've seen, this tends to be how the record goes for Ohio State, which is it's pretty alarming how similar it is to last year. And it's just but it's happening in a different way, where it was the Bryce Sensabaugh highlight reel audition tape for the NBA before. It feels like they have just so many more pieces that are each producing to their own extent, and that this shouldn't be this reoccurring issue. You know what I mean? I just feel like because it's not so centrally focused, you should be able to pick up some slack here and there across the roster. But man, yeah, it's got to be tough because it's looking like there are plenty of shades that have been seen by Ohio State fans before.
Well, and you just watched them play.
Yeah.
I mean, when you looked at, because when I look at it, I say, again, I'm going to give full credit to Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is a good team, and I'm not trying to compare them to IU and say they're the same team or anything like that. But I am saying, I felt like Ohio State had some of the same struggles in this game that they had against IU, which you expect to happen on the road in a really tough environment in Assembly Hall. But at home, you would expect, some better play. Bruce Thornton, goes 1 for 5 from the 3-point arc. Ronnie Gale goes 0 for 4. Jamison Battle goes 4 for 5. But, how good is that really if your other 2 guards are going 1 for 9 from the 3-point line? I mean, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's not Sensabaugh, but it is 2 players who they're really just not playing really well right now. Not quite the turnovers that they had against Indiana, but still poor shooting. Burke, I'm curious, did you see the similarities between Ohio State playing Wisconsin as you saw with Ohio State playing Indiana, or no?
No, because I don't think you can fairly compare Indiana and Wisconsin right now. They are 2 entirely different monsters. One being very cowardly and timid right now, and the other one being like, Alec, you said that you didn't think that much of this Wisconsin team heading into the season.
I don't know about if I was
that
low on
JR
them.
Who said that?
I wasn't terribly high on them.
I was high on them.
Oh, no. See, I
top 2 or
was
3.
low on them because I was like,
Yeah.
did you guys not play the same Wisconsin team we played last season? I didn't know. Yeah, but I just felt like they were like, yeah, they're bringing back all this veteran leadership, and it's just like, yeah, but how talented was that veteran leadership? Weren't those guys kind of fleshed out in what they were bringing to the court? What was left for them to get? But what was left for them to get was Storr. Like, that dude has changed the makeup of this entire program, it seems, with just the identity of drag you down and beat you with experience. That's out the window since this kid got on campus. And you can't say that. They played all right today. Wisconsin is a great team. Unfortunately, yeah, it was done on home, so that definitely hurts. You want to win the ones you can.
Right. And I think that's just kind of the moral of it all. Wisconsin is a very, very good team this year. I've said it before. I'll say it again. They fit their roles, and everybody does what they need to do. Now, I think it was it Crow the one that had his knee, or was it Wall that had the knee bothering him? I think
Wall.
Was it Wall? So you hope that doesn't continue, because you need the starting lineup to remain intact. They do really, really well together. But I think if Wisconsin, far from me to tell Wisconsin to improve in any way. They're, like I said, they're a very good team. But if Connor Essegian for Wisconsin starts doing Connor Essegian things consistently again, watch out for this Wisconsin team, because this Wisconsin team could make a deep run in the NCAA tournament with their experience and with somebody as electric as a Connor Essegian can be to make those things happen. Alec, am I wrong to think that Wisconsin, we could be looking at a Elite Eight, maybe even Final Four team?
I don't think you're too far off. I mean, I don't know about that far, but I definitely think this team has the pieces. If everything goes well, they could definitely make the second weekend, because they just have I said this before, they have some really good guards that they've been battle tested so far. This isn't the usual Wisconsin team where they're going to try to grind it out. They're not going to shoot a ton of shots. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're just going to grind. They're going to win it on defense like Rutgers does all the time. This is a team that can really fly high and really put up points on the scoreboard. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with AJ Storr coming in and giving some of these other guys a good role to follow. And I really do think that they can make a deep run if things fall their way in the bracket, or if they get hot at the right time. This team could go far. I've been really impressed with them.
Yeah, I am too. And I'm jealous of them, because I wish my team was as good as Wisconsin's team is. But, it is what it is. Enjoy it, Greg Gard and everybody else. I remember last year when Wisconsin fans were, vying for Greg Gard to be fired. Bet you don't wish that now. So
yeah, he's giving you the most exciting basketball they've gotten to watch in probably 30 years.
Exactly. So, all right, moving on from there, we're going to get into some game previews now. Our first one we're going to preview is Michigan and Maryland. Burke, you and I were talking about this one a little bit before we got on. There is a very interesting situation here if you don't know what's going on. Basically, Doug McDaniel is not allowed to leave campus. He is, being homeschooled right now. It's one of those classic situations where mom says, get your grades up and then you can go play with your friends, but you're not leaving the house. Obviously it's much different than that, but Doug McDaniel is apparently struggling with his academics right now, and it's a weird situation. I don't think I've ever heard of it before. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but he can only play home games. He can't travel, so he won't be able to play in this one, and I'm not really sure what Michigan is going to be able to do to combat that. I mean, we look at Doug McDaniel, he's not the only piece to this offense. This is still a very good offense,
he's half of the only pieces of this offense.
Right. He's a good amount still. What's the Tennessee transfer's name?
Olivia Nkomwa.
Nkomwa. Yeah, I still can't pronounce it very well, but I mean, he's still a very good offensive player as well and has been impactful for this team. But I still think a lot of what Doug McDaniel does is what creates for it. And Maryland, I mean, as much as people thought they might have been, a good offensive team this year, they've just not been. It's really been their defense that has been better for them this year. If you look down there, 28th in KenPom for them. So, Burke, you tell me, are we confident in Maryland in this one because of Daniel being out? What do we think Michigan's going to do without him?
You can't be confident in Maryland in any situation right now. I was so high on this Maryland team, and they proved me to be a phony, dude.
Oh.
You can't trust either of these teams. This game is truly a very movable object coming in contact with a very stoppable force. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
So I guess just who do you think is going to win then?
Who do I think? I think Jameer Young wins this game.
Yeah.
I don't think Maryland wins this game. I don't think Michigan wins this game. I think Jameer Young wins this game because whoever they are going to have taking Doug McDaniel's minutes, do we even know who gets the majority of those? Because he has been on the floor for the entirety of these games.
I was looking up in KenPom to see if there was anything, and there's not a whole lot in KenPom that would suggest what they're going to do.
Yeah, and if whatever they throw out there is worse at defense than he was, like, which, I mean, if they were better at defense, they probably would have found a spot on the starting lineup by now. So it's going to be a tough day for that Michigan backcourt down the best piece of that team. Yeah. So, so Maryland via Jameer Young doing it all. Because, again, like I said, I just could not believe Julian Reese. It went 0 points in that Purdue game. Just crazy.
Yeah.
That I cannot believe that he was a preseason favorite to be a Big Ten all type guy.
I mean, he's been excellent on defense this year, which has been what's been helping them with their defensive rating. But he's not been the offensive player that they hoped he would be. So, Alec, what are your thoughts on the Michigan and Maryland game?
Yeah, this is probably gonna be one of the worst games that I will be watching, because I agree with Burke. Jameer Young is gonna win this game, and nobody else. I mean, this Maryland team just cannot shoot for the life of them. Michigan is they're not a bad defensive team, but they're actually never mind. No, they're bad. But Doug McDaniel has been a spark for all the action they do, because he's a quick and small guard that's been able to really get downhill and use some of his skill set. I mean, I don't really know who's going to replace him. I mean, Jalen Llewellyn, I haven't really paid too much attention to Michigan so far. Will we see him? Maybe. He hasn't really played all that much coming off that torn ACL. Yeah, I agree. I was trying to look at KenPom to see who would take over a lot of his minutes, because I mean, if you look at the team page, he's the only guy listed as a major contributor. The next highest guy is Olivier Nkamhoua, who is a significant contributor.
Right.
So it's going to be tough. Namari Burnett's going to have a lot on his shoulders at the other guard spot to try to do something. But I think it's going to be Jalen Llewellyn. We're going to see what he can do. This is going to be an ugly game. I'm with Burke. I think Jameer Young wins this game. He puts up another 20-plus performance. I think there's probably going to be one other guy from Maryland that even puts up 10. I think we're looking at a 60 to 50. I'll go with a 68-61 game, but an ugly 68-61 game where nobody feel even if Maryland wins, they don't feel particularly good about it either.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Jameer Young just kind of having his way with this one. The KenPom prediction is 71-69 Maryland. I don't know if KenPom has adjusted for Doug McDaniel being out, but I completely agree. I think Burnett, is he going to be able to take over as the guard to help in this situation? He's definitely not going to be able to do what Doug McDaniel has done this season for Michigan. I think it's hilarious to listen to Greg Waddell over on Sleeper Media talk about Doug McDaniel, because he's just in love with him over there. And every time I listen to him, for good reason, because he's been one of the only bright spots on this Michigan team. Burke, I want to talk about the coaches for a minute before we move on.
Boy.
We have Juwan Howard, who obviously has had a crazy season. I don't know. He might let Phil Martelli coach. We don't know.
Not for long.
Do we have Juwan?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
They're not in Philadelphia, so I think he will be coaching. But obviously, Juwan Howard, and then Kevin Willard, which I know the Turtleheads are not happy with him at all in this one, and it's not looking like he's had the best coaching season so far this year. I mean, at the end of the day, who do you trust more in this matchup? Do you trust a Kevin Willard more? Do you trust a Juwan Howard more? I'm curious your thoughts on the coaching matchup here, Burke.
Oh, I mean, this is just two of the most down bad programs there are right now. And like I said, very movable object and very stoppable force, that is their coaches personified right now. I don't know what is going on in Michigan. It seems like they are doing this on purpose as a social study in how their fans will react to what decisions are being made by the AD, what messages are being sent like to their fan base. And dude, I can't explain what is happening in Michigan. Just Juwan giving up the spot after he had been in the heat for like this entire month. It's just so bizarre, but it's so interesting, and I'm gonna watch the hell out of this like a car crash, man. It's gonna be awesome.
Like a car crash. And if you are wondering to yourself, well, why are they down so bad? Maryland's 11-3 and Michigan's 9-6. I had typoed the standings there. My apologies. Michigan is 6-9, and Maryland is
No, but who do I trust more?
They're 9-6. So
Who
yeah,
who do I trust more? It's begrudgingly Willard, just because they're at Maryland. Of course, like I saw in the last game against a number one opponent, they had 14,000 in attendance, which, I mean, maybe there was the same storms. Was that
I
could
don't think it
have
was the
played a
storms. I think
factor?
it was the students weren't there.
But even then, man, it's the number one team in the country.
Right.
That's crazy. And I do feel a kindred like spirit with them, because like I think they would identify majority as a basketball fan base as opposed to football.
If you look at their football crowd.
Yeah, exactly. And just having that many seats empty when you have the number one team in the country visiting, that's absurd to me.
Yeah. Well, pray for the Michigan fans who are starting to pay attention to basketball.
Oh my
now.
God.
they football season's over, and it was a great season for Michigan, but I have a feeling there's gonna be some Michigan fans who go over to basketball and they're like, "Ew, what's going on?"
Where's Hunter Dickinson?
I know that'd be me if I was, if my Ohio State Buckeyes were having the season, I'd come over to Ohio State and be like, "Ew, what's going on? This is not what we signed up for." Alec, real quick, same question to you. Who in this coaching matchup do you tend to trust more, Juwan Howard, Kevin Willard? What are your thoughts?
I would say Willard at least a little bit less begrudgingly than Burke, only because I've seen the guy coach in the Big East for about a decade now at Seton Hall. I've seen this guy up close a lot when he's been coaching the Pirates, and he's at least a steady presence, not a overly high or low, but he's steady. And there's not a ton of confidence right now with Maryland, but you feel like things aren't going to completely fly off the rails, even if they have sort of completely flown off the rails. But Willard will never let it feel like that, even if he'll give you some, little backhanded notes in the press conferences after the fact. Michigan is flown off the rails. They have crash landed on the ground after flying off of said rails. I have never seen a weirder week for a basketball program the whole season, Juwan underwent open heart surgery, which is obviously no joke. Props to him for coming back, still wanting to come back to his team. But then you give up the head coaching spot to your assistant coach, who was the head coach before, because he's back in the arena that he used to coach in. It just felt like a soft launch of firing Juwan Howard. I don't know who signed. Juwan signed off on it. Sure. I don't know why. And then your best player is suspended due to academic issues, but only for home games. I mean, one would assume he spends a lot of time doing basketball things at home as well at Michigan. It just feels like there's never any accountability in that program for like anything. And their best, I'll finish it off with this. Like, their best player right now is on basketball house arrest. That's what this program has devolved into. It's shocking.
I mean, there was accountability there when John Beilein was there, but ever since he's gone, doesn't look like it as much. So, all right. Well, those are our thoughts on that game. Michigan State and Illinois. So, a quick update on Terrence Shannon Jr. If you've not been following that whole saga, Brad Underwood had an interview, I think it was earlier today, where he said there's no change in anything right now. Obviously, there are the rumors that he's going to sue Illinois, which will give him a temporary restraining order, so that way he'll be able to play. While that does look like that will happen at some point, if not, it's already happened. I'm not kept up too closely on that. Brad Underwood has said that he will not be playing in this game as of right now. So I guess there could be something that changes tomorrow, but I find it hard to believe that Terrence Shannon Jr. would just show up to the team and all of a sudden be, playing the exact same minutes he was. So even if he does play, probably not going to play, exactly the same as he was. And quite frankly, Underwood's been doing a good job without him. I know they lost to Purdue, but Domask has been very, very good. I think Luke Goody has been a good insertion into the lineup. Coleman Hawkins has been doing well on both ends of the court. Could do a little bit less whining. We talked about that last podcast, but he's a passionate guy, and I appreciate that in players. So I can't always be mad about it. Alec, what are your thoughts? Illinois and Michigan State tipping off tomorrow night.
Yeah, I really do think Illinois is gonna, even if it's it's at Michigan State. That's right?
Yeah, I think I mixed it up there.
Okay,
No, it's at Illinois.
Okay, cool. Then I just mixed it up. But yeah, I mean, Illinois playing at home, even if it was at the Breslin Center, I would say that Illinois is going to win this game. I really think they're playing really well right now, even without their star. Like you mentioned, Domask has been a star coming into this team. I think he can carry the load. Coleman Hawkins, if he can, he just got to tighten some things up, but I think he has a chance to look really good too. And I just don't think Michigan State has the firepower to keep up with a Domask and a Coleman Hawkins, and even a Quincy Guerrier can start get going from the floor. I think this Illinois team has looked pretty connected without Terrence Shannon. And whether he does come back or he doesn't come back, I think this team is going to look pretty good against Michigan State. The Spartans, there's just not a whole lot going on right now. Even I feel like Tom Izzo, like we just saw Nick Saban retire earlier today. I think Tom Izzo is going to be the surprise retirement of this offseason. That's my hot take,
Wow.
Blazing hot, all that. I think Tom Izzo might be the surprise retirement this offseason. It just, I think this Michigan State team can still win a game or two in the tournament, but it doesn't feel like it has the same juice. And as I say that, they're going to bring Rutgers in the Breslin Center and beat them by 20. So that could come back to bite me. But yeah, I think Illinois is going to win this game fairly easily. But not fairly easily as in they're going to win by 15. I think it's going to be they're going to get a lead and they're going to stay ahead no matter what kind of push Michigan State gives, because they're still talent. It just doesn't feel like the same Michigan State team of years past. But yeah, I think Illinois is going to win this game.
Well, Michigan State just doesn't have the strong defense down low like they've, had in the past. I was looking into a player like Xavier Tillman earlier today, and just what he was always able to do for Michigan State. Really that defensive presence down low, and they just don't have a guy like that. They've been called soft this year. They've been called, basically every word in the book that would make you question, are they playing, to the highest degree possible? And I would say even the fans that I've talked to, no, they feel like they're not. They feel like Tyson Walker doesn't have the most help. A.J. Hoggard isn't exactly who he needs to be. Now, the last 5 games for Michigan State, they've been very good. They are averaging nearly 23 23 assists per game. That's amazing, kind of unheard of in the last 5 games. So they've been really good there. They've been rebounding the ball pretty well. Defensive rebounds, they're 28 rebounds a game there. So, I mean, they're doing a good job these last 5 games, but I kind of just feel like Illinois is just a really darn good basketball team, and it's at home for them. And, while I do think Tom Izzo has been the better coach throughout his career, I think Brad Underwood's just cooking a little bit more this season, and I can see Brad Underwood possibly out-coaching Tom Izzo in this game, especially at home. Burke, what are your thoughts on the Michigan State-Illinois game?
My thoughts are this will be one in the front court. Coleman Hawkins will need to perform. If it's talent versus talent, I'm taking Domask and Illinois' backcourt than Michigan State, or then Walker and Michigan State right now. That being said, like Tyson Walker, he could solo this game. He could solo any game, any given night,
Right.
and he might honestly be due to do just that. But yeah, as far as just what they're bringing to the front court, like Illinois performed very well against Purdue, and that was a Purdue team that sank Edey off of Ty Rogers, just let Edey operate down low.
Right.
And if that's the key to beating this Illinois team, if Michigan State tries to follow that method, like the free hunting Madi Sissoko doesn't scare me nearly as much as Zach Edey, free hunting Zach Edey would. So I think this Illinois team would be ready for anything Michigan State has to throw up against them, defensively at least.
Yeah, I'm looking at CBB Analytics, which I forgot to do the ad for that earlier. CBB Analytics, go check them out. They're a very good resource that they allow us to have a free pro tier, so that way we can tell you about it. And I want to make sure I actually tell you about it since I forgot to say it earlier. But when I look on CBB Analytics, like I said, the last 5 games have been really good for Michigan State. They are in the 100th percentile in their offensive rating. Well, so is Illinois. Illinois has an offensive rating of 131, and Michigan State has an offensive rating of 127. And they're both in the 100th percentile for teams in the last 5 games that they've played. So I would not be surprised to see an offensive affair here. I would not be surprised to see at least one of these teams get up above 80, maybe both at some point. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, Burke. I think it comes down to the front court. Is Coleman Hawkins going to be able to be that defensive presence down low? He's not quite got the blocks this season as he normally has, and that's kind of, teams scheming a little bit more to bring him out to the perimeter. He's still a very good defender. He's just kind of not down low making those blocks as much this season as he normally is. But I still like Illinois in this game. I think they're going to come away with the win, like I said earlier, Brad Underwood and that kind of stuff. But ultimately, they're just the more talented team. They're the team that's gelling a little bit more right now. And ultimately, they're just the team I trust more. And so we'll see if I'm right. But or go ahead, Burke.
Yeah, I was just going to say, credit to them for being able to trust them as much as we can right now. I really thought after the Terrence Shannon thing, much like you're like, is this the same Ohio State? I thought that Terrence Shannon moment was like, oh, this is exactly the same Illinois.
Right.
Like they are due for a tailspin, and this will be the same season as was the one before. That isn't the case. These guys are banded together around Underwood, and they're playing some damn good ball.
They are. And I said going into the season that my biggest concern with Illinois was consistency, and I didn't know if I could trust him game in and game out. So that takes a lot for me to say here that I trust Illinois. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is Brad Underwood has just done a really good job coaching this team this year. After losing Terrence Shannon Jr., it would have been really, really easy for this team to just, nosedive and start playing for themselves and panic and get stressed out. I don't feel like they're doing that, though. I can be a little critical on Brad for playing Ty Rodgers and Dane Danger as much as he did against Purdue in times when Zach Edey was on the floor, and I felt like it just wasn't a good matchup. But at the end of the day, he's done a really good job this season coaching this team, not only in games, but also it seems like off the court, getting them ready. So, Alec, are you with me? Do you think Brad Underwood has just been a much better coach this season? Do you think maybe it's fool's gold right now, and they'll kind of come back to maybe some of that inconsistent play that we've seen before? What are your thoughts on Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, if they're without Terrence Shannon for extended periods of time, I don't think they'll keep up this level of production. I think they will fall off at least at some point. But yeah, I think Underwood's doing a really great job. He's scheming up some really good stuff, especially with Domas. He's such a great player. Offensively, can just produce at such a high level. And I really think he's doing a great job. If they don't get Shannon back soon, I think they will have a couple of games where they slide back a little bit. But for now, I mean, things are looking really good. And it's going to come up to March once again because he's had the regular season success over and over with guys with Kofi and Ayadasumu. It's just the March success that has not gotten there yet. And if he can string together some wins in March, then I'll feel a lot better about Illinois and Brad Underwood. But that's what it's just going to come up to. And if they're without Shannon, I don't feel as confident. But if they do get him back at some point, then sky's the limit for this team, I think.
Isn't that what it seems to come down to for every Big Ten team? It's like, see what you do in March.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just been like the story of this conference, man. Burke, you look like you want to say something.
I was just going to say, building on that, how you were saying, it is pretty strange how you do expect them to take a little dip, and that's understandably because they're playing out of their minds right now. But that is a testament to Underwood in himself. Like, a dip after that, you would think that dip would come right out of the gate while they were trying to find a way to gel without the guy that they have all been gelling around. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, a credit to what he's been doing this season as a head coach.
Totally
Makes
agree.
a guy really jealous.
Totally agree. I hope Sonny is watching this episode so he knows
Oh,
that we're giving
I love
proper
Mike
love
Woodson,
to
by the way.
everyone.
Just going to say it. I love him to death.
Yeah.
But God knows I'm a bad one.
That's all I have for the Illinois-Michigan State game. You guys got anything else before we get out of here? Nope. All right.
Nope.
Well,
I don't got anything else.
sounds
Late
good.
one,
Thank you,
but-
everybody. Whether you were watching live or you caught this afterward, we appreciate you. Thank you to Burke and Alec for coming on here. Go check out their podcast, Pike's Place for Alec and Often Daunted for Burke. Of course, IU and Rutgers stuff over there. Appreciate both of them. Appreciate you being here. Have a great night and see you later.
Alec, we're coming. The rack. Never again, dude. I say it every year, but never again.